Hey guys, Tuna here. The last few days I've been doing a bunch of practice to try to figure out what the easiest or best way to level is for the Poison Burst Pathfinder. And the main issue is that both in Act 1, Act 2, like when we get to the end of Act 2, there's really like a lot of issues in regards to just going pure poison. And the primary issue is that you don't have access to toxic growth until the end of Act 1. And you also don't have access to gas arrow until level 22. So the reason that's an issue is because poison burst arrow itself doesn't actually do any hit damage. So the way that it works is that, like, yes, when the arrows itself hit a monster, it does hit damage, but the nova that you see around it, that's purely poison damage. And so in the early acts, it just feels really scuffed. Since you are throwing away like a better half of your damage and you have no AoE clear. So what I found the best way to level is you either go for the grenade option, of which thankfully I can link you guys to a guide from Havoc. So if I go Ranger, Explosive Grenade Ranger, which details basically exactly how to level through the campaign as a poison grenade, as a grenade ranger. Otherwise, you can go for lightning arrow and stormcaller arrow, which is actually how I was leveling it here in this VOD. And it's something that I learned by watching Tua DH's video. So I want to give a big shout out to Tua DH for putting out these videos as well. He's been of great help in trying to like learn how to progress through the campaign and that kind of stuff. And he had a 10-hour 2T15 maps run with Poison Burst specifically, or rather with Gas Arrow Toxic Growth, which we'll just add Poison Burst on top to make it smooth. So as you can see, 2ODH is basically just going through the campaign with Lightning Arrow, as well as later on, I believe he's doing Stormcaller Arrow as well. Yeah, Stormcaller Arrow all the way until you can swap to Gas Arrow Toxic Growth, and that's at level 22. Okay, so the first thing you'll do in Act 1 is you'll get a Lightning Arrow gem, and the next gem you will cut is going to be Lightning Rod. The first support you want is Multi-Shot, and you're going to be linking Lightning Rod to Multi-Shot. And then you go for a Frost Bomb, and this is to apply exposure to monsters. You're still going to be using your bow shot in certain situations on certain monsters in Act 1, specifically because it does a lot more damage than Lightning Arrow. And a lot of monsters that move around quite a lot. For example, like the rare that you find in the second zone. Yeah, this one's going to be pretty hard with Lightning Rod, so default attacking is probably best. And then when we get access to Stormcaller Arrow, things become a lot more simple, because you can just basically use Stormcaller Arrow when you link it to multi-shot and then elemental armaments, you're going to just be able to like shoot monsters, and it's going to feel somewhat like a normal bow skill. And what makes it deal damage on top of that is that you definitely want like Herald of Thunder. So I would recommend going Stormcaller Arrow when you get a Herald of Thunder gem. If you scroll up here to the gems, you can see all of the links. Lightning Arrow is going to be linked to Chain. The primary use for Lightning Arrow for us is when we put down our Lightning Rods. So we're going to shoot down our Lightning Rods on bosses and things like that. And then you can shoot them with Lightning Arrow. Or alternatively, you could always take out Scatter Shot, or Multi-Shot rather, from your Stormcaller Arrow, and replace that with another damage link such as Rapid Assault or something like that. So there's quite a lot of freedom in the gems that you cut in Act 1, but for the most part, this is going to be your setup. It's going to be Lightning Arrow linked to Chain, and you can put elemental armaments on there as well if you have spare supports. You're going to get Lightning Rod, Multi-Shot, linked to armaments as well. Frost Bomb. You don't really want to cut supports for this one, since the entire purpose of this is just to basically put it on a monster, and the longer he stays within the circle as it's about to blow up, the more damage he takes from elemental damage, right? Because he gets exposure applied onto him. Then you have Stormcaller Arrow, which is going to be helping you to clear packs and stuff in the early acts, and this is going to be paired up with Herald of Thunder, since Stormcaller Arrow has like a very high effect, like a shock effectiveness, essentially. Just like it ends up shocking monsters a lot more than Lightning Arrow at this point. So yeah, Stormcaller Arrow linked to Multi-Shot and elemental armaments. And if you are on a boss and you want to use Stormcaller instead of Lightning Arrow, and you want to forego this entire setup, the Lightning Arrow, Lightning Rod setup, then you can just go for a rapid, like faster attack rapid. I always get confused between the two names. rapid assault or rapid attack. Sure. And then you just link that to, yeah, Stonecaller Arrow. Herald of Thunder with elemental armaments. This is going to be taking you all the way to level 22. At level 22, this is when you make your swap to primarily Gas Arrow and Toxic Growth. And these are your two main skills that you'll be using throughout the campaign. This is because Gas Arrow makes blowing up your Toxic Growths really easy. It's ground targeted, so you can just like put gas on the floor, and then you can shoot your toxic growths. So as you can see here from the VOD, the setup essentially looks like you are throwing your toxic growths, so you're shooting a gas arrow onto them and almost dying. But essentially, like, you put your gas on the floor, and then your toxic growths are going to be soaking up the poisons from the gas arrow, and yeah, you're going to be able to explode them that way by just having monsters inside of them. And I have an issue here in this clip that I have fire damage on my gear, and I would suggest not getting fire damage because otherwise you're prone to igniting enemies. And when you ignite them, your gas cloud is going to explode, which is not ideal for, you know, for exploding your toxic growth thingies, pustules, whatever they call them. And from here on out, it's pretty smooth sailing in regards to your gem links and stuff like that. You're just going to be following up on what you have here in this embed. So with Poison Burst, you can kind of have like a Poison Burst setup with multi-shot and Bursting Plague. And if you have like a decent damage bow, this is gonna feel really good. And decent damage bow, by the way, you guys can grab a Silver Tongue or Sliver Tongue at level 39, I believe you can equip this, as you can see here. And it's really, really strong. So at level 39, you can equip a Sliver Tongue, and all of a sudden you're basically able to go to T15 maps with this, and it's gonna make Poison Burst feel really good. But if you are stuck with a campaign bow, like something like this, you know, this is not a lot of damage. This is okay. It gets you through, but it's not really good. So in that point, then the 2-button combo is really what's going to be carrying you, right? Because you really want to abuse the power of Toxic Growth. It does so much more damage than everything else. So yeah, Gas Arrow into Toxic Growth or Poison Burst Arrow into Toxic Growth. On single target, you will use Vine Arrow. So just shoot Vine Arrow onto a boss, and then you want to make sure that then you're setting up with your Toxic Growths and your Poison Burst or Gas Arrow. Despair also is quite late in progression, so you'll grab a Despair when you have access to it, and then make sure to keep up with your in requirements, because the level threshold of monsters that's inflicted by the curse depends on the level of the skill gem itself. Herald of Plague, this is pretty much mandatory, although we get it at level 31. So we're going to be swapping to Poison at level 22. And that's after, specifically, we do the Trial of the Sekimas, right? So you're going to be doing the Trial of the Sekimas. You're going to be getting Overwhelming Toxicity, which doubles your poisons. So that's going to be basically double damage. You don't have any sort of spread at this point. So this is where Bursting Plague helps. And at level 31, you'll get Herald of Plague. And Herald of Plague is going to be giving you Poison Proliferation, right? Going to be spreading your most damaging poison, which is going to drastically increase your clear, especially if like tougher monsters are within packs. Of like a rare monster inside of a pack, it's going to basically melt because of all the poisons that transfer onto him. Then we're going to get Wind Dancer as well as Withering Presence. So if you feel like you're lacking damage, swap Wind Dancer out for Withering Presence, but if you feel like you have enough damage, just use Withering Presence, and then later on in the campaign you can put in Wind Dancer. And then for the rest, it's pretty self-explanatory. Just follow along with the gems here and socket them. In endgame, we're going to be getting some really interesting supports in that we're getting Garokan's Resolve. And Garokan's Resolve is going to be giving you crazy crit chance as well as crit damage. Since you can snapshot damage with poisons for the most part, considering that the most damage dealing poison persists, you can kind of like fish for procs of the quad damage that you get from Garokan's Resolve. It's going to be pretty good. And then on Toxic Growth, I use Arakali's Lust because this Toxic Growth guarantees you get a lot of stacks, and this has been buffed to 40%. And also Ulnitul's Embrace, if you have a physical damage bow, it's insane because it's 40% as extra chaos from Fizz. So yeah, grab those gems whenever possible. But of course, if you don't have those, you can just grab any sort of like poison gem, specifically like if you have deadly ailments or that kind of stuff, swap those out. Then when we go for a hybrid, we're going to want to get Ghost Dance in there. And the trouble with that is that we do need to have a little bit of spirit. So if you can see here, we're going to need 40 spirit to reserve all of our stuff. This is something you only need to worry about when you swap to hybrid energy shield evasion. So yeah, get ghost dance in there, and then you'll have an extra 10 spirit that you can put clarity in for the extra little bit of regeneration, right? But it's not mandatory, of course. Like if you just want to use something else, you can. But yeah, like ghost dance, you'll still need an extra bit of spirit, so we're gonna get that on the amulet. You can get it on body armor as well, actually. So yeah, if you want to get it on body armor, you can get it there. Now, plague fingers are really good. You can equip these at level 4. I think they're gonna be pretty in demand because the build turned out to be quite popular. But plague fingers are good because they allow you to essentially get like elemental damage on your gear. So it's really helpful to have those early. It allows you to essentially just, you know, not care too much about what bow you're using or what quiver damage you have and that kind of stuff, because alternatively you can only poison with fizz and chaos, but plague fingers allow you poison with any kind of elemental damage, so you could get lightning, cold, fire on your jewelry and that kind of stuff, which allows for greater flexibility when itemizing in early game. So if you can get one of those, get it. It's pretty good. But I think as soon as you get like a sliver tongue, things start to be a little bit less. It starts to be less mandatory to have plague finger to like sort of allow you scale your damage, because this already has a decent amount of physical damage. And for the rest, you could just focus on getting physical damage. And as you transition to a better pair of gloves, like this, for example, where you just have a bunch of damage on it. But yeah, wanted to talk about the two final setups, which is going to be Voltaxic as well as Pure Fizz. This is going to be the end game stuff. So what it's going to look like for you in end game. Voltaxic is getting buffed. It's getting like 50% more damage. A top end of 400. It's insane, actually. Like, this bow is really, really good. And the downside, of course, is that it has only 5 base critical strike chance. But with Garakan's resolve, I don't think the critical strike chance is really going to matter all that much. So judging off of the PoB numbers, the things that I was looking at, it still ends up being by far the best option in the mid game, because on top of giving you the additional damage that you wouldn't otherwise be able to get, you know, like a ton of lightning damage and that kind of stuff, you are getting the ability to shock with chaos damage, which is you know, it's hard to measure, but it is a lot of extra damage that you're getting. So yeah, that's definitely not one to be slept on. Voltaxic is insane. Grab one when you can. So the idea would be to upgrade from Sliver Tongue to Voltaxic Rift ASAP. And then Voltaxic Rift also allows you to get lightning damage on your jewelry and stuff, right? So you can get lightning damage here, jewelry, as well as your quiver. And then finally, you're going to go for a crazy Fizzbow. And it's going to be hard for a Fizzbow to beat Voltaxic, but they do beat Voltaxic. So in the end, you know, you're going to be looking for something like this. These crafts are basically make-a-wish. I don't think they're really obtainable this league without the crazy crafting that we had last league, but I put them there just so you guys know what the stat priorities are and what to look out for. So Fnatic PoE is probably our best base by and large, because of the implicit chaos damage that we get from it, as well as you know, all the other stuff. Since they did nerf Twin Bow and that kind of stuff, we don't get additional arrows, and this modifier here is kind of temporary for now until we get like the full torrent update. So but ideally you're going to want to be getting some arrows in the end game, so get a root in there for additional arrow, get the suffix, and if it's advantageous enough to actually grab the nodes on the passive skill tree, I will edit it and add those nodes in there as well. All right, so everything you guys need to know about the build is both in the written build guide, as well as if you go up to this embed and you click it, it opens up the planner. And the planner is just a nicer sort of like view for you guys to just have this open while you're leveling, so you can click through all of these things and see your, you know, like sync it up to your progress, as well as seeing like the gem cutting order, the story rewards, that sort of stuff. For story rewards, we definitely want to be grabbing the resistance. Stun threshold, I think, is the best. Ailment threshold is also very good, but stun threshold really helps for hybrid builds since we're not getting a high life pool total. And I go for increased global defense is the final one. And I would say this would get you most of the way, right? Like, but if you do want to look at the PoB link is here, and I'll also add that in the description. So you can open up the PoB. This will also show you, you know, more specific things but I found that the damage is it's very difficult to figure out the damage for a build like this, specifically because all of our poisons are coming from different sources. Is it poison burst arrow? Or are we getting it from toxic growth, all that kind of stuff? So, but I did go through and I made sets and loadouts. So you got your campaign loadout, which is going to sync up your gear, as well as your maps loadout, as well as your Voltaxic loadout and your hybrid phase loadout. Finally, for your passive skill tree progression, you can scroll down to the passives here, and I really want to stress that this is like a really, really easy way for me to display exactly what you need to do at what stage. And the way you access that is through these arrows here at the top. So if you go to the campaign tree here, you can scroll through and it shows you step by step where you want to be going. So by this point, you're still going for like Lightning Arrow and Stormcaller Arrow. You're grabbing your Primal Sundering from there. Then you go for more elemental damage here and here. Then you grab attack damage and attack damage. And at this point, this is where you want to be grabbing your first Ascension. So you're going to be grabbing the double poison, right? Which is going to be here. And then, boom, you do the pivot to poison. And all you really need to do is respec a couple of points here. You're going to be doing that with gold at the hooded one. You're going to be grabbing +1 poison as well as the poison nodes here. Swap for these attack ones. This one is pretty useless for us at this point. So, yeah, it's not necessary to click that. You walk all the way up here. You grab your Blinding Strikes, which we already had, but Blind is really helpful. And since at this point you're no longer using Stormcaller Arrow, you can grab Pierce. We'll grab Pierce as well as a bunch of projectile damage, and this really helps. We're really starved on percent increases on this build, especially early. And then we'll grab extra poison when you haven't inflicted one on a target yet, so this will help you clear a little bit when you're using Poison Burst. Then we'll go for this node here for extra damage, as well as starting to flesh out our crit. I know it might seem weird to go for crit this early. Crit on poison builds, like even if you have 20% crit, it's still good because you're sort of able to fish for those procs. Each single arrow is calculated separately, meaning that you are going to be getting a crit more often than not, right? It's not like per shot. It's not either that you crit or you don't crit. It's calculated per arrow, and I think it's also calculated per pustule on toxic growth. So yeah, we're going to be grabbing these daze as well as increased damage against these enemies, as well as a bit of critical strike chance. And we're going to go for here for increased damage against rare uniques, as well as increased critical hit. So this is really nice because rare and uniques are obviously going to be the toughest thing next patch, specifically as they're buffing them. Then we grab all of the poison nodes. We grab our second Ascension, which is going to be your speed is unaffected by slows, which is pretty good. No more chills and temp chains and that kind of stuff. Flesh out more crit. And grab a bunch of evasion. This can be grabbed like earlier if you want. Then we'll go out to the monk starting area. And then we'll travel up to Killer Instinct because the next nodes will be that. But at this point, this is when you should swap to the map tree. And then from there, the progression is somewhat, just detailed here by the itemization, right? So the items will match the tree that you're using. So keep an eye out for that. Now, finally, for the stat priorities, I go through in detail a lot of the things that you want to look out for in the campaign and the stats that you're looking for and everything you can hover over to figure out like what is, right? So we have all of these new really nice embeds here. And then you can see the stat priority for your stuff, depending on whether you're in maps, the campaign, what are you looking for, and etc. etc. So I'm just going to go through and clean this up because there's some doubling up here, but essentially you can just look stat by stat. What is your best stats for each individual slot? And that's what to look out for here. That pretty much sums it up. That's everything that you need to know. I hope you guys find the written guide helpful. And I hope you find the POBs as well as a little bit of my advice helpful. You can see I put in a lot of time into figuring out how to like level this thing. I gotta be honest with you guys, I don't feel like leveling feels amazing on these characters. I tried grenades, like I tried a lot of these things, and everything feels really rough until you get gear, right? It's very gear dependent. But if you, for example, manage to get a Sliver Tongue at 39, you're probably just gonna be blasting all the way to endgame with no problem whatsoever. But yeah, even looking at like very experienced players like 2ADH, doing his runs, it just you know, it's not the easiest experience, obviously, but it's easy as in like you have good damage, but your clears is quite tough, right? Like you're gonna have quite a tough time in certain spots with your clear. So, you know, getting swarmed and that kind of stuff. And since you have two buttons as well as a delay, it can be a bit of a challenge. But it is sort of a lot better than other leveling builds that I've seen. And I would still think that it's like one of the best builds to level into endgame. But yeah, I'm not gonna really sit here and be like, this is the best shit ever, you know. But in PoE 2 standards, it's pretty good. Now, I wanted to end this video by saying I'm gonna be following this template, but I think I'm gonna be playing Spiral Volley instead. I think so. I played a lot of Poison Burst last league, but I'm kind of interested in Spiral Volley because of, you know, the fact that we now have access to less arrows, and it seems to be quite easy to get Spiral Volley going because of uh, you know, the fact that we're breaking a lot of armor. So if I go into my Spiral Volley setup, it's going to look like something like Spiral Volley, Bursting Plague, Golden Tools Embrace for additional Armor Break 3, Poison 3. So Poison 3 is going to be giving me more magnitude and chance of poison. And finally Corrosion. And Corrosion is going to break armor depending on how much poison damage I have. And I think the reason I'm not putting this out is because I need to really test how it feels like, specifically the charge generation. But from what I see, I think it's gonna feel pretty good. And of course, the issue with Spiral Volley was always that you had some single target stuff that you needed to figure out. But with Poison, you could just use Toxic Growth with Poison Burst Arrow or Gas Arrow, and that pretty much sorts out your single target anyways, right? Like you have really good single target on these builds. But yeah, we get to play Spiral Volley for mapping, which I think with running Assault, you know, with the sprint, gonna feel really, really good. So if you want to know more about that, obviously I'll be testing things out on stream as the league goes live. So I don't want to make this video too long, and I just wanted to make sure that you guys are aware that the guide is out and that yeah, and start getting some feedback on that. Because if there are any questions, then definitely let me know. Thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you found this video helpful, and see you soon.